Good morning, everyone. Sri Govind Mohanji, Secretary, Government of India, other friends and colleagues, those who are here today. I'm going to give this talk on Harappan civilization and recent perspective. Um, um, First of all, thanks to the Archaeological Science Center, IIT Gandhinagar, for organizing this international colloquium and also inviting me. Before I actually start, let me kind of express my thanks to several researchers, those who have actually contributed to better understand the civilization, Harappa culture, or in the civilization over the years. My special thanks to all the institutions, especially MS University of Baroda, Archaeology Survey of India, and Gujarat State Archaeology Department, those who have been actually supporting our research in the civilization for all these years. There are many institutions, individuals, those who are part of this research. I am thankful to all of them. In 1924, when John Marshall actually kind of declared the discovery of Indus civilization, with one stroke, it actually took the civilizational history of India almost 2,000 years back from what has been then considered to be, starting from the time of Buddha. At that time, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, these were the two sites which were actually known. There was only one site which was actually kind of located outside the Indus basin. That was Rangpur, which is located in. Okay. The only one site which actually located outside the main Indus Valley, in fact, was Rangpur. Today, what we have is more than 350 sites which are actually located, which is actually going to be spread covering more than a million square kilometers, covering different geographical and environmental settings. So this, in fact, is showing. This picture actually shows the distribution of Harappan sites. So we have actually come a long way in the last almost 100 years by discovering several sites distributed not only in the Indus Plain but also in the adjoining regions, that is Ghaggar Saraswati system and in Gujarat. To give you a brief idea about the chronological context in which the Indus civilization will actually be discussed, this is a comparative chart which actually shows the position of Indus civilization with the contemporary civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. These were the two contemporary. And of course, you have the civilization remains which are found on Omanis Peninsula. What one can actually see is if you start looking at the roots of Indus civilization, it actually goes back to the beginning of food producing cultures that actually emerged somewhere around the 8th millennium or 7th millennium BC in the Indus plain, starting from Mehergar, then other sites like Kilugul Muhammad, and many sites which are actually found of that category in that region. The antecedent stages of this civilization can actually be seen in the village farming Chalcolithic settlements, which has been actually dated from 3600 BC onwards, and which has been the civilization, the way we understand today, does have what is known as an early phase, also sometimes described as the regionalization era, which actually describes the process of cultural development, which is also sometimes described as a pre-urban era, because the urban phase of the Indus civilization is the most obvious and easily identifiable phase of the Indus civilization. And then you have the urban phase, which is dated from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. Then, of course, you have the post-urban phase, also sometimes known as the late Harappan. That's a context in which we actually kind of understand chronological context of the civilization. The entire sequence has been actually built on the excavations at Harappa, where they have a series of dates which actually help us to check and cross-check the chronological context of the civilization. Unfortunately, none of the sites in our country, our sites actually do have a similar kind of chronological framework. I suppose we should actually try to cross and check and cross-check the chronological sequence in several sites, for example, at Dolavira or at other places, to correct the chronological context and rebuild and to check whether this chronology is actually applicable even in this context. What happens is that when the civilization was originally discovered, its antecedent stages was not really known. Today we know the antecedent stages. There are a mosaic of early Chalcolithic settlement which has been found in the Middle Indus, Balochistan, and in the Punjab region, which dates, which actually dates back from 3600 BC onwards up to 2600 BC, which actually contributed in the emergence of urban mythos in the Indus plain. And what we know today is that even Gujarat, or in the southern fringes of the Indus civilization, as well as the eastern, that is the Ghaggar system, has actually contributed equally in the development of the urban phase of Indus civilization. So many of these early Chalcolithic settlements are actually identified on the basis of different kinds of ceramic assemblages and other material remains which are found in different regions. We actually see a mosaic of such cultures throughout the Indus plain as well as in the Ghaggar Saraswati system. When we come back to the distribution of Harappan sites, sites belong to Indus civilization. We have actually mentioned there are more than 3,500 sites. They do not actually belong to the same period. They actually kind of cover a range of a range from almost covering 2,000 years. From 3600 BC to 1400 BC or 1300 BC. All these sites, in fact, have been documented, recorded and documented and published by various agencies through food survey, which has been essentially, which has been actually kind of now enhanced by remote sensing. Remote sensing, in fact, is an extremely interesting tool that can actually kind of understand the environmental setting of the sites, as well as to understand the what is known as the distribution of the site in different region and their geographical context. It can also actually try to understand what actually led to the abandonment of the site when they are actually found to be kind of paleo channels, etc. In the sites, actually, if you look at the sites, there are hierarchy of a network of sites actually forming a certain hierarchy in terms of size. You have very large settlements, which are like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, or Dholavira, and Gandhinagar. This, what you can actually see, is are equidistant, and then you have smaller satellite settlements surrounding them. You have what you call the first tier settlement, second tier settlement, third tier settlement. They're all essentially based on the size. Most of the settlements, in fact, are extremely small, very small. Sometimes within 5 hectares. So some of them are even smaller than 1 hectare. There are a few sites which are what we call the townships, which are 5 to 10 hectares. There are slightly bigger settlements like 10 to 50 hectares. So it essentially forms a hierarchy of settlements, which actually shows, which actually indicate the pattern of settlement or settlement pattern, how the civilization actually kind of harnessed resources in order to sustain their urban way of life. Another factor which has actually emerged in the recent research is emergence of regional diversity in the Harappa culture. You do actually come across different regions actually showing their own traits, and one of these, one of such regional development which we see is in Gujarat, where you actually see this, where you can actually see the circled area in Gujarat, which actually shows their own regional trait, which we actually define as the Saurashtra Harappan, which is defined chronologically very well, contemporary with the urban phase of Indus civilization. It's also defined by the difference in material culture, which is more easily identifiable in the kind of ceramics which you actually come across in the Saurashtra Harappan sites, and what we actually call the classical Harappan sites. Their vessel forms are different, their paintings styles are actually different. There are differences in the other material culture as well. The difference between the two is also manifested in the way the settlements were actually managed and planned. You know that the urban Harappan settlements have a standard kind of planning which actually follows what is generally described as the tripartite or the bipartite planning. You don't come across that in the Saurashtra Harappan structure, settlement. They are actually very small, indicating the differences between the two. And the difference is also found in the kind of crop, the main crop cultivation. As you can actually see, there is a disparity in the kind of crops that were exploited in the Indus Valley, mostly the winter crops, that is wheat, barley, legume based. Whereas in Saurashtra or in Gujarat, you actually come across the millets being the staple food. Wheat and barley were certainly there. They were subsidiary to the millets. So this, we can also see that the exploitation of millets, local food grains, actually the history of it, antiquity of it actually goes back to the early Harappan times, 3600 BC. These are some of the evidence which we have, actual evidence from the macro floral remains, as well as the residue or the starch grain, as well as the phytoliths, which actually indicates exploitation of different local millets, which actually forms the staple food for the Harappans even during the urban times. The other aspects of the other aspect of subsistence economy, in fact, was stock rising, and they kept the domestication of animals. Major animals which were domesticated, in fact, was the cattle, sheep, goat, and buffalo. There are very little evidence, in fact, for the horse, donkeys, as well as two-humped the camel. The exploitation of these animals has been attested by the faunal remains, actual remains, which we come across in the archaeological context, but also has been attested by the fatty acid and isotope studies, which were actually able to understand the kind of food they actually consumed. As you can see, the presence of dairy products have been proved direct by the evidence by the researchers. Chakravarti and others have actually kind of demonstrated dairy products were actually processed at Kotla Badli, one of the sites in Kachchh. Meat provisioning and livestock management has also been actually kind of attested by the isotope studies of tooth enamel. The sites which have been actually used is classical Harappan as well as the Saurashtra Harappan sites in Gujarat. And there are also evidence for different kinds of meat being actually kind of preferred by different, the early Harappans as well as the urban Harappans. That is possible through fatty acid residue analysis, taking samples from sites belong to different cultural periods. So these are the new areas of research which has contributed in understanding these areas of past life in a much better way. The Indus civilization, in fact, was an urban civilization based on urban economy. One of the important features of urban economy, in fact, was the craft production. Craft production, the raw material for craft production actually comes from different geographical regions. So this demarcated area actually shows the provenance or the location of those resources. These resources need to be actually kind of exploited and then turned into craft goods by bringing them into craft production centers, which are generally located in the urban centers, like Harappa or like Chanudaro, Lothal, Dolavera, etc., which essentially indicate there was a network that resource exploitation network which Harappans could actually kind of establish, and that network did actually efficiently work for almost from 2600 BC to 1900 BC, which means almost 700 800 years without much of a problem, um, suggesting the efficiency of that network. Um, you can actually see these are the different resources that have been actually exploited, uh, uh, that has been actually exploited by the Harappans, which are actually located from. You can actually see the exploitation of copper from the Aravalli Hills. The analysis of copper from Dolavira essentially indicate the copper was actually coming mostly from Aravalli Hills. We do not have sites which essentially how exactly these were exploited and then actually transported into Dolavira and then converted into craft goods. We do not have a complete understanding about it. It is essential to actually kind of understand these things by more focused studies. This is one of those the currently working mines which you actually come across in that region. Um, uh, uh, Craft production essentially resulted into what is known as sites which are focused on making these craft items. One of such sites which we have in Gujarat was Bagasra, small little site, just 2 hectares, but it actually has evidence of craft production of three major crafts like the shell, stone beads, as well as fans. Most of these major craft works were actually carried out within the walled part of the settlement. Outside also you do come across evidence of such craft activity. These were probably household craft activity. So you have a combination of both organized craft production, which involved high-end technology, which were actually nicely protected within the walled area, whereas small-scale production that is happening outside. This, in fact, is the shell workshop, which was actually excavated at Bagasra, where you can actually see the raw material being piled and stored, and the bangles being cut and to be polished. So indicate the raw material for this actually is coming from the Arabian Sea, and Bagasra is actually located half a kilometer away from the Arabian Sea. By the side of this shell workshop, you actually do also have two other workshops. One is essentially meant for the production of fans. Fans is a synthetic material, and what we actually came across is a workshop producing the fans bangles as well as the beads. The other workshop which we came across at this small little site is a stone bead production workshop. What you actually see is silos in which the raw material was actually piled up or stockpiled. Um, and then these were then converted into different kinds of beads. And bead production essentially involves what we call, especially semi-precious stones. Bead production involves drilling holes through it, which in fact it's a difficult task. Um, and till they actually came across this very interesting rock, which can actually kind of can be used as a drill head and drill holes through these hard semi-precious stones. It has been actually kind of proposed that the source of the raw material is Kachchh and northern part of Gujarat. So Kachchh and Gujarat essentially played an important role in the economic production and the urbanization of the Indus civilization. Semi-precious beads, in fact, was one of the major craft items they actually traded within the Indus civilization cultural domain as well as outside. You do come across these beads actually in the Arabian Peninsula, sites contemporary to Harappa culture, as well as in Mesopotamia, and other such sites, suggesting their importance. These interesting beads. Many of these beads are actually 10 centimeters long. So drilling these 10 centimeter semi-precious stones actually is a really a feat, a technological feat. Without this earnest height, they could not actually. Today we have diamond drill bits. There are no diamond drill heads actually been found from the Harappan contest. So this certainly was a prestigious item of that time, and that probably is one of the reasons Harappans could actually kind of sustain their the urban life better. The other interesting bead, in fact, is the etched or the painted carnelian bead. These are also found to be distributed far and wide. They are rare, another prestigious prestige good of the Harappans. So what we actually see in here, in fact, is most of the semi-precious stones actually are coming from Gujarat. That is the source of agate, carnelian, chert, etc. You do come across workshop at Chanudaro, Mohenjo-daro, or Harappa, even at Rakigadi, suggesting that raw materials from these from Gujarat were actually kind of transported or going off to all these far-off places. Indicating the actual network that existed during the urban phase. So once the urban phase actually comes to an end, all these networks actually become defunct, or the end of this network actually suggested the decline of the urban phase. What it resulted, in fact, is the the management of the settlement. As the urban centers actually started growing, you need to actually kind of manage the settlements. So most of these Harappan settlements do have this large fortification walls and elaborate gateways, essentially suggesting what is known as a social hierarchy, and people, group of people, those could actually manage and maintain the daily functioning of such settlements. And how exactly this supervisory authority was actually kind of mandated, one does not really know. It could actually be through contractual basis, or it could actually be inherited. One has no idea, but if we do not actually know, what exactly the nature of this administrative structure of the Indus civilization. We certainly know that there could have been an overseeing administrative structure for the smooth economic production, without which one cannot actually have such elaborate standard features which we come across in many of those settlements. And you can actually see this very well manifested in the kind of proportion ratio which we actually see in most of the urban centers. And that it was not possible if there was a supervisory authority which was overseeing the construction activities, etc. Every site actually throws up different issues of maintenance. So this is the water management structure which has been excavated at Dholavira. Dholavira is actually located in a very arid zone. Every drop of water, in fact, is precious. So they found a way of actually kind of conserving this by creating a series of water tanks. So what one can actually see is that which involves construction of such large tanks involves involvement of large resources which need to be kind of managed, and that also kind of indicate the existence of an administrative structure which kind of oversaw all these activities. Social hierarchy, therefore. Another aspect which reveals the social hierarchy, in fact, is burial. Harappan burials, in fact, are different from the burials we come across in Mesopotamia or in Egypt, which are very opulent and very obvious, and also quite affluent. Many of those burials, whereas the Harappan burials are quite Spartan. But yet you do come across variation in their burial features and burial structures. For example, at Dholavira, you have a unique tumulus kind-like structure which is found only probably only at Dolavira at the moment. We might come across similar structures some places as well. But apart from that, these burials actually did not contain much of a wealth. You come across mostly pottery and some few ornaments, etc. Apart from this, you also do come across many different kinds of burials, suggesting probably different customs, which is followed by different groups of people. That's the way we actually observe in ethnographic records. So you have kind of cyst burials, you have also kind of cairn burials, which are also, some of them are very similar to the kind of later period megalithic burials. They do actually contain skeletons, and some of them do not have any skeleton, just the burial goods. Um, Similar, this practice, there are in many burials or cemeteries actually belong to the Indus civilization actually discovered. You have one at Lothal, you have one at Harappa, Fermana, etc. They are actually rare. The antiquity of these kind of tradition most probably goes back to the early Harappan cultures. That is what we have actually discovered very recently from Gujarat. These are the sites where we have this early Harappan burials. You have from Dolavira, you have Pabumad and Surkotada, Daneti, and Junikati. These are the Surkotada was excavated in the 1970s, but then Daneti and Junikati are excavated in the last 10 years or so. So we have some interesting evidence of the antiquity of these kind of burials going back to the early Harappan times. These are the burials from Daneti near Bhuj. It shows what is known as burials with capstones and also filled with the different kinds of pottery. You have burials with skeletons as well as no skeletons. And that is the site which Kerala University is actually excavating, Juni Katia. Similar kind of burials have been actually reported from this site. You can also see the kind of burial chambers with the stone masonry, which is actually not found at Daneti. So there are variations within the burials, and then these are actually found to be the early Harappan burials, suggesting the antiquity of this. The burials, what you come across at Dolavira goes back to the early Harappan times. Another important aspect about Indus civilization is the Harappan script, which is still an enduring puzzle. In fact, there are no unanimity about how many symbols are actually there. Generally agreed upon is 400 to 450 signs. There are also evidence about this evolution from the early stage to a later stage, from the Revi phase, that is referring to the early phase at Harappa, to Kodiji, and to the Harappan. That is when it actually started appearing in the seals and ceilings, which we are so familiar with. It has been actually argued these are the signs which we come across. In fact, are either logosyllabic. Sometimes some of them are actually pictograph. So in fact, you do come across them in combination. But anyway, we do not really know whether it was really logographic or pictographic. Seals, where do you actually come across these? They are mostly found on the seals and impressions of the seals on terracotta and other places. These seals are essentially used for trade and other social transactions. As we know, the decipherment of the seal, the script is elusive. Primarily because we do not have a long inscription where a particular combination is actually repeated, so that would help us to understand the script. And another problem, in fact, is that no bilingual inscription. Then we do not know the language as well. The absence of bilingual inscription, it is almost become impossible to kind of decipher the script. That is, in fact, is one of the major challenges that as an archaeologist, linguists, we face. These seals are also, some of these Harappan seals are found from Mesopotamia, which actually kind of indicate the names of the deities, etc. Probably these are the seals which we can actually see reported from the Mesopotamian sites. These seals, most probably, in the absence of bilingual script, these may actually help us to to learn more about the decipherment of the Indus script. Um, so the other aspect about Indus civilization, which we know, is its contact with the outside world, especially of the Arabian Gulf, that is in Oman, and Bahrain, that is Dilmun, and also Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamian cuneiform scripts, we do actually come across a reference to Meluha, which has been identified as the sites in the Indus Valley. It actually refers to the Meluhans' presence at Mesopotamia, and also the items which are actually kind of related to Meluha, which actually deals with the agate, carnelian. And you also have seals and ceilings which are found in these places, suggesting that direct contact or interaction that existed in this world with the Mesopotamian or the Western world. There are also ceramics like black strip jars and other ceramics which are of Indus origin found at these sites. Um, the decline, Harappan decline and the climate. The question of climate. I suppose this is another area which the scientists, archaeologists has actually been trying to understand what role the climate kind of played in the decline of Indus civilization. There are many reasons which has been actually cited for the decline of Indus civilization. One of them, in fact, is the climate. Climate actually has become prominent because of the recent discovery of the Magellan event, which is around 4.2 kilo years back. There was a pronounced aridity, which actually globally kind of attested to, and this actually coincides with the decline, probably the decline of Indus civilization. And climatic data having similar profiles from Aegean Sea to the greater Indus region has actually been found. That picture by Dikshit et al. Actually shows how this data actually kind of indicating deterioration of the climate around 4.2 K. But how severe was the effect of these in the Harappan domain is a big question, because Harappan culture is actually found to be kind of spread into different ecological regions. So more further investigation, in fact, is actually needed to understand the degree of impact this climatic event actually had in the decline of the civilization. If you look at the archaeological context, if you look at the archaeological archaeological evidence, what we actually come across, the 4.K event actually coincides with the peak, almost the peak of urban phase of the Indus civilization. And then the urban phase did continue with certain changes almost up to another 300 years, that is 1900 BC. But you do actually come across some amount of stagnation and weakening of the economic base, which started around 2100 BC to 2000 BC. You can see there is a setback in the economic activities of the Harappans from 2100 BC onwards. It slowly and steadily and progressively kind of deteriorated from that time onwards, and then it completely disappeared from the urban ethos actually disappeared from 1900 BC onwards. So there is no evidence of a sudden decline of the civilization. It's a gradual and perceptible decline, which one can actually see in the archaeological context. So climate certainly must have played an important role, a catalytic role in the decline. What one need to also understand is that for almost 600, 700 years, from 2600 BC onwards, there was no technological innovation that actually happening in the urban phase of Indus civilization. All the technologies which we associate with the Indus civilization was already been crystallized or established by 2600 BC. So from 2600 BC to 1900, you don't come across any new economically important technological innovation actually happening in the civilization, which means that civilization actually was becoming stagnant as far as innovations in technology are concerned. Any society which actually does not innovate is doomed to decline. That's exactly most probably what's happening to the Indus civilization as well. And the climate and also the other events actually added as a catalyst for this economic setback, inability to innovate, which is actually set into the Harappan society in due course of time. What happened after the decline, the post-urban or late Harappan phase? What happens, in fact, the urban ethos or complete urban cities were almost completely abandoned. Urban ethos were completely forgotten. But what you see is the emergence of local traditions. We have, which is actually represented in Gujarat by Rangpur, late Harappans of Rangpur second C and 3, and the Jukhar kind of assemblage, which we come across the lower and the middle Indus Valley, and the northern Punjab and the Gagar Saraswati system, it is the cemetery edge or the Bara culture, which was a very, very poor shadow of the urban Harappa culture. Now, future perspectives. What are the issues which we actually kind of to grapple in to understand the Indus civilization better? One important aspect is the lack of knowledge on polity and organizational setup. We talk about the urban centers, the management of urban cities, etc., building large fortification walls or water structures. What we really do not know the polity and the organization setup of the urban Harappans or the Harappans. How do we tackle it? Probably kind of creating more data on hinterland through hinterland surveys, and also kind of studying equal importance to small settlements, which are the satellite settlements, as well as the big settlements. There are projects which are actually running, like the Two Rain project, which are trying to document these aspects, and for probably we may be able to kind of address the issues of organizational setup in a much better way. Then you have the undeciphered Harappan script. This, in fact, is the very most fascinating aspect of in the civilization because of the decipherment still eludes us. We need to kind of update the concordance on Harappan script. I suppose it is an ongoing process that need to be kind of enhanced. Also need to update the corpus of Indus script and Indus inscription. There are volumes which have been actually published. There are, and that need to be actually kind of strengthened. And then research on Harappan data from cuneiform records. As I said, we have this Harappan seals which are found in Mesopotamia, and researching cuneiform records would probably, in the absence of bilingual script, would be one of the ways of addressing the issues of decipherment, hopefully. The other issue is, in fact, more scientific investigations to understand mobility, paleodiet, and paleoclimate. This is where the residue analysis, isotope analysis, starch analysis, etc., actually would play a very, very important role. I suppose we can see that there are, including IIT Gandhinagar, has actually taken an initiative in this direction. We are going to see a lot of interesting results from these new researches, and also lake profiles for paleoclimatic, more accurate paleoclimatic reconstruction. Understanding technologies and provenance studies, that is certainly important. This has been a concern right from the 1950s onwards, but there are still a lot of gray areas. For example, stoneware bangles, we do not know exactly how these stoneware bangles were actually produced. Fanes, I suppose there are a lot of research going on. Probably we'll come up with some interesting answers about the technological aspect, and copper and bronze and ceramic petrology. These are the areas where one can actually expect to have a more application of more science-based research tools to answer the questions, answer the issues. And the other aspect is the lack of awareness, threat to archaeological sites. That's a common thing everywhere. The threat of archaeological sites is actually an imminent threat. It is actually going on all the time. And then the one way to actually address, in fact, this is educating people, so that they would actually understand the importance of these heritage sites. Not that every site needs to be protected. I suppose there would be that is not possible. We need to have some ways of actually kind of documenting as well as kind of some of them can actually be kind of protected or immediate destruction of such sites. And the other important aspect is collating data and access to the researchers. That is also another area, in today's age of net, it's much, much easier. But then we do not have a virtual database where everyone can actually access. For example, you have this harappa.com, wherein you come across a lot of information about and data of the Indus civilization. Why can't we actually think of something of that kind, which would actually address the larger interest of the researchers, young researchers? Yeah, the other issues, in fact, is understanding fast populations and paleo migrations. That's an area where stable isotope analysis, especially the carbon, oxygen, lead, and strontium isotope analysis, can actually have been actually doing a lot of interesting work, and that need to be actually kind of strengthened and enhanced. And also these results, which are actually you come across through this scientific analysis, need to be kind of related with archaeological evidences. It is only then it actually kind of make meaning for understanding the structure of the Indus civilization, structure and society of Indus civilization. And then finally, understanding the aftermath of Harappa culture. An area where very little attention has been. Most people are actually fascinated by the urban phase. The late or the post-urban phase is actually kind of has not been getting the attention it ought to get. I suppose that's an area one can actually use the remote sensing data and also coring studies, etc., to understand that as Ajit Singh has actually done in the Gagar Saraswati region, for understanding the shifting and drying up of the rivers and what effect that had in the movement of people or movement of settlements, especially during the post-urban phase. These are some of the issues one would actually be, some of the issues that comes in mind as far as the future research areas are actually concerned. And thank you very much for your patience.